Hey, this is Troy Erickson from copywriting.org, and today we've got another exciting interview from somebody who's had over 150 clients, even though just a few years ago she started out Googling how to make money online. It's an incredible story. And she really focuses, especially in the coaching niche now, the six, seven, eight-figure clients. So we're going to chat a little bit about what makes a really good sales page and hear more of her story. So I'd like to welcome Kristen Ladas.
Oh, thanks, Troy. Thank you for having me on today. Appreciate it.
No problem. Yeah. So could you elaborate a little bit more on your story? Because, we've heard, over the last few years, a lot of really successful people who at one point Googled, what the heck is copywriting? And they became pretty successful. And you're one of those people. So I'd like to hear a little bit more about the story.
Yeah, of course. So I'll dial it back a little bit, even before I even Googled that. So my whole life, I've been writing stories. I've always writing nonfiction, fictional stories as a kid. And I wrote song lyrics. I wanted to become a singer, not a writer. And as I got older, I got interested in journalism. So I wrote for the school newspaper and was doing that. And I thought I was going to end up in a journalism career. That's what I was actually striving for. And then once I got to university, things kind of shifted. I have my degree in professional writing and communications and information technology. So I took all the writing intensive courses and learned how to do science-based tactical writing and financial writing, journalistic, and all the different types. So I'm pretty well versed for anything. And I just didn't know exactly what career I wanted. I knew I wanted to get into marketing or advertising or somewhere in communications, just didn't really know where. And one day I was just Googling, because everybody's like, oh, you can't make money writing for a living. Why don't you become a teacher or a doctor or a lawyer? The typical things that, your family says to you, right? And I'm like, no, writing's for me. So one day I'm just sitting here in my childhood home and I'm like, okay, which writing job makes the most money? And of course, copywriting was one of them. I had no idea what that was in my fourth year of university. And I just started looking more into it. It's like the marriage of copy and writing and sales, and you get to help people make money. And I was like, this sounds dope. I'm going to do it. I'm really going to do that. And I just learned more and more about it, found courses online. I did Marie Forleo's and Laura Belgrade's course. That was the very first copywriting course. I took the CopyCare, and I just ordered a bunch of copywriting, marketing books, just started, diving into it. And that was my first side hustle. I was working at a bank full time after university. And I decided on January 1st, 2019, I was like, I'm going to start freelancing. I'm going to try it. So I did it after work, during my lunch hours, weekends. Weirdest projects I've ever done, but because I was all over the place. I didn't know how to niche down or anything at that point. So I tried everything. And yeah, so 4 years later, I'm here and I'm writing for some incredible coaches, consultants, course creators online in the marketing space. And I met some incredible people and been in high-level masterminds, and it's been quite a ride. So I'm really glad that I Googled it that day and found out, and we ended up here.
Yeah, it's really amazing too, because most of the time when people Google it, it's more like, what's the best way I can just make money? But for you, you actually enjoyed writing, which is even cooler. And surprisingly, it's actually really rare among a lot of copywriters that who are really good, that they enjoyed writing prior to becoming a copywriter. So even better. Now, with your success in writing for coaches, consultants, et cetera, could you explain a little more about what exactly you're doing? It sounds like you're writing sales pages and what's working.
Right. So once I niched down with the coaches, consultants, course creators, I decided I wanted to do their whole sales funnels for launching new offers. And that was kind of the thing. So now I'm helping them write their Facebook ads and doing their email sequences for promo, doing their sales pages, upsells and downsells, the check, literally anything throughout the sales funnel. And that's currently what I do. And so what I do technically like to tell people I specialize in is sales pages over any other type of copy. I don't know why, because it's the longest type of copy. And people are always like, no, why don't you do ads and emails? You barely write. But it's I think as a writer with that background, I'm just naturally like, I really want to write long sales letters, and I really want to get deep into it. I love the storytelling aspect of it. I like to, I guess, not so much convince people, but like we like to say, persuade them in a way with the story and really get into it. So I guess like we could talk about like some tactical stuff for sales pages for people out there who want to spice them up and get them to convert higher. So I think,
Yeah, 100%.
yeah, let's get into those. So one thing that I love helping people with is infusing personality into their sales pages. I think a lot of the time where they're writing it themselves, which a lot of people do, it's fine, but it doesn't sound very conversational. And the one thing that I tell people when I'm working with them, we do our onboarding calls. They're like, oh, I'm not a good writer. Like, I never know what to say. So we're on our calls and I'm asking them questions and I ask them more questions and more. I'm like, no, keep on talking, keep on talking. And soon enough, we've developed a voice for them. And they're like, oh, I didn't know I could say that or say this. And I'm like, no, this is why we have these conversations. The more you talk, you're actually writing the copy without realizing it, right? So that's like one thing that I tell them. I'm like, just keep talking to me. Talk to me so much. I'm going to get to know your voice really well. We're going to infuse those personal stories and experiences. Talk about your clients with me. Talk about their successes. And all of this comes together into a beautiful sales page, and they just don't know it. So that's like one thing I would say.
So important, because if you think about it, when you're trying to remember your whole story, like as a business owner, for example, like it's hard. Like life is really complicated. There's so many different things that you can forget about, or maybe you write one page and you tell one version of the story and you write another page and it sounds a little bit different. So like getting the story straight, getting the voice down, that's why I like writing sales pages first if I'm writing for myself, because it establishes the story and I really sit down and try to remember all this. So with you helping your clients do that first, I think it's key, and it's not something that you want to skip. So it's a good first step.
Yeah, and it helps with congruency too, because sometimes they're writing different pieces of it throughout the funnel, and somewhere along the lines it just doesn't sound the same. And so it's like, that's again why I start with the sales page first. And I think like many other incredible writers out there do as well, and just pull from it to write the rest of it so it sounds similar. So I think that's like one very important piece that not many people think of, like the offer owners themselves, if they're writing it, they don't really do, but that's why they have us.
Exactly. Yeah. As long as they can just tell us information, we can turn it into an amazing story. So
absolutely. Yeah. Another thing too.
Right.
So along with that is, even writing headlines, as we know, most important part of the sales page, we want to grab people's attention right away. So if somebody doesn't have like a VSL on their page and we're just doing the headline, a lot of what I see actually with people that I've been working with, they're at a high level, but for some reason, they're not adding the unique mechanism in there. And I know other writers talk about this too, but I find it so interesting because it's a question that comes up every time I'm on a call with people. I'm like, okay, but what makes you unique in your industry? Like I had a photography client, she's selling a course. I'm like, well, there's so many other photography courses out there. So like what's different about this one that I may not find from another person, right? So we ended up talking it through. The more she was telling me, and I was like, oh, it sounds like you have a 5-step system to optimize, I guess, like the whole business itself. So it's not actually teaching photography and how to take a picture. It's more so how to do your entire back end and systemize everything so that it flows. And so we ended up actually coming up with like a name and everything for it. And she even added a whole other piece to her course before she launched it, like right at the last minute after that conversation. So I think that it's important to find what's unique about it. And it's something that I think is very overlooked. And again, another client I had with, they're in the sales industry, they're sales trainers. And I worked with so many people in the sales industry. And I always ask them like, well, what's different? Because everybody in sales is teaching the same stuff, but like, how are you teaching it differently? Is there like some sort of method you use? Is there a way you train people differently than others? Because there's hundreds of thousands out there. And I'm like, so what makes you different? So it's like having those conversations is so important and so often overlooked. And I think too, it gives them a light bulb moment right after they're like, oh yeah, we should probably use that. And then once we figure that out, we come up with like a banging headline. So
Yeah, that's a good thing to help clients with too, because it's like,
yeah.
Even within the photography space, it's like their audience could be people who are interested in buying photography. They could be interested in selling theirs to make money. They could be interested in taking photos, or maybe they're interested in starting a whole business. And then there's like different levels of business that people are at when they come in. So that's just a really important distinction to make to help clients identify like, hey, who exactly are we selling to here? Because photography is way too broad. So
Yeah.
really good point.
Yeah. Thank you. And I think like one other thing too that I notice is something so simple yet so powerful is our call to action, of course. And I'm one who doesn't like reading buy now or register now. I'm like, that's so boring. How can we make this more fun? I want this now. Let's use a benefit focused call to action, right? Even on the buttons too. And there's one copywriter that I came across. I can't remember his name right now, but he does an incredible job of having creative call to actions. And it made me want to buy his course right away. And I thought it was just so clever the way he did it. It was as simple as like, oh, click the big red button below. And the button actually said big red button on it. And I was like, we should be more creative with stuff like this. It's just eye-catching and it just has more personality to it, I think, than just buy now. I think like a lot of the times it's weird. I want to keep things simple, but at the same time, I want to get creative and have fun with it too. Even if it's like more on the serious side, like it's okay to have some sort of benefit focused thing. Like, I want to change my life now, or like whatever that outcome is that you want people to have, like use that in your CTA. I think that it's a little thing, but it's a big thing at the same time. So those are things that I think would spice up a sales page.
Yeah, that's cool too. It's just really important. It's like I've been talking to my team a lot lately as well about creativity versus simplicity. And like we didn't even talk about this before, but you brought it up. So I always think that the best strategy is like having something they're familiar with that's simple, and then something new that's unfamiliar that's creative. So the creative side is more like a mechanism, or maybe like the vibe of the sales letter, like the big red button thing.
Yeah.
I would imagine that the tone of that letter was probably like a little bit humorous in certain spots for that to make sense to people. But in terms of simplicity, like for example, on the next page, on the actual checkout page, I think pay now, Stefan George, I said at like a recent Copy Accelerator event that pay now wins above everything else because it's familiar with people. Or like anytime you check out on any company's website, especially if they're like a huge company or a corporation, it always says pay now. So they're
on the checkout page, 100%. I would have to agree with that one too. We could still keep it at pay now, buy now, whichever one. Simplicity definitely in the checkout works.
Yeah, so that's cool too. Just really being able to like help your clients distinguish where do you get really creative and where do you use something that's simple and familiar. So totally. I think those are 3 really solid tips that a lot of people could probably just take and go make a lot of money with right now. But if they want your help with that, if they were like, gosh, I want to reach out to Kristen and get some help with the sales page, whether it's consulting or done for you, where should they go?
Well, they can go to my website, www.copybykristen.ca. You can email me info@copybykristen.ca or find me anywhere, Copy by Kristen. That's my handle. So
perfect. There you go. There's a congruency. Again, really important.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Kristen, thank you for being here. And to everybody else listening, thanks for tuning in to this copywriting.org video interview. It has been a pleasure, and I'll see you next time.